I found a key in the flower pot, hidden beneath the soil. It was small, silver, unmarked. It shouldn't have meant anything, but it did. It changed everything. We had been married for 5 years, Sarah and I. 5 good years, or at least that's what I thought. We had the kind of relationship people envied, independent but close. She had her passions, and I had mine. I preferred a quiet life, afternoons on the couch, football games, and the occasional fishing trip. Sarah, on the other hand, was a burst of energy. She loved staying active, moving constantly, yoga, hiking, climbing. She was always doing something. I admired her dedication to fitness. I even joked that she was made of muscle and caffeine, but I never questioned her need for freedom. That was one of the reasons we worked so well together. We gave each other space. She'd go off to her yoga classes or on weekend climbing trips with her group, and I'd enjoy the quiet at home. It was the perfect balance. At least that's what I kept telling myself. I don't even remember why I was cleaning that day. Maybe out of boredom, maybe out of guilt for leaving her to do most of the housework. Either way, I was dusting the bookshelf in the living room when I accidentally knocked over the flower pot. It was a small plant, nothing special, just a leafy green Sarah had brought home a few months back. The ceramic pot hit the floor with a dull thud, sending soil scattering across the hardwood. I cursed under my breath and went to grab a dustpan. That's when I saw it. Amid the dirt, something metallic glinted under the light. At first, I thought it was a piece of the pot that had chipped off, but when I picked it up, my fingers closed around cold, smooth metal. It was a key, small, silver, and completely unmarked. No brand, no number, nothing. A chill ran down my spine, the kind that makes the hair on the back of your neck stand up. I turned it over in my hand, the weight solid, familiar. I knew every key in this house. Front door, back door, garage, mailbox. But this one was new. I stood there for a long moment, staring at it, trying to remember where we'd gotten that plant. Had we bought it at the nursery, or was it a gift? Maybe it came with the key already buried inside, but why would someone do that? It didn't make sense. I heard the front door open, the sound of Sarah's voice as she called out, "I'm home!" My heart jolted. Without thinking, I buried the key back into the soil, quickly scooping the dirt over it. I placed the pot back on the shelf, making sure it looked just as it did before. When Sarah walked into the living room, she gave me a puzzled look. "What happened here?" I forced a laugh. "Just my clumsiness. Knocked over your plant." "Don't worry." I cleaned it up. She glanced at the pot, her eyes lingering just a little too long. "You didn't break it, did you?" "Nope. Good as new." Her shoulders relaxed, and she smiled. "Thanks, babe. I'm gonna shower. Long day." I watched her walk down the hall, my gaze fixed on the plant. That feeling in my gut didn't go away. I tried to shake it off. It was just a key, probably, left over from the previous owner. But something about the way she looked at that pot stuck with me. I put the key out of my mind for a while. Days passed, and life went on as usual. Sarah was busy as ever, going to yoga classes, meeting friends, and planning her next climbing trip. I was content to let her do her thing. We were happy, or at least she seemed to be. But then I started to notice things. Small things, things that didn't seem important until I put them together. Sarah began to spend more time with that plant. She watered it more often than the others, fussed over its leaves, and even loosened the soil with her fingers. Once, I watched her kneel beside it, her hands buried in the dirt, her face focused. I pretended to be scrolling through my phone, stealing glances from the couch. Her fingers moved purposefully, not idly. She was searching for something, or hiding something. A chill ran through me. The key. She was checking on the key. I didn't confront her. I couldn't. Not without sounding crazy. But the knot in my stomach tightened every time she touched that pot. Then came the day she rushed out of the house right after watering the plant. No kiss goodbye, no explanation, just a quick, "Gotta run! See you tonight!" And she was gone. That night, she came, home exhausted, more exhausted than I'd ever seen her. Her shoulders were slumped, her hair was disheveled, and she didn't even eat dinner. She just mumbled something about a hard workout and went straight to bed. But something didn't sit right. Sarah was in amazing shape. She never got this worn, out from yoga. I couldn't sleep. My mind was racing. I thought about the key, the way she handled that plant. the look on her face when she saw me cleaning up the dirt. I waited until she was sound asleep, her breathing soft and steady. Then I slipped out of bed and crept into the living room. The house was dark, shadows stretching long across the floor. I flicked on my phone's flashlight and aimed it at the pot. My hands trembled as I dug into the soil. I felt around, fingers, sifting through the dirt. But there was nothing there. The key was gone. My heart skipped a beat. I checked again, digging deeper, turning the pot sideways. Still nothing. The key had vanished. I stood there, my hands covered in soil, my mind spinning. She had taken it. But why? I replaced the dirt as best I could, wiping my hands on my pajama pants. The air felt heavy, oppressive. I looked at the hallway, where Sarah was sleeping peacefully, completely unaware of the chaos in my head. The next morning, she was her usual self, bright, cheerful, no sign of guilt or worry. She kissed me on the cheek and left for another yoga class. I watched her go, my chest tightening. I needed answers. I looked up the name of her yoga studio online, expecting to see class schedules or pictures of smiling instructors, but the search came up empty. No studio, no website, nothing. I double-checked the spelling, tried different variations, but every result was a dead end. That was the moment the suspicion took hold, the moment the trust between us cracked. She was lying to me, about the yoga, about the key, about everything. I didn't know why or how, but I knew one thing for sure. I was going to find out the truth, even if it destroyed me. I didn't sleep that night, not even for a moment. The image of the empty flower pot gnawed at me, the phantom weight of the missing key pressing down on my chest. Where had she taken it? What was she hiding? The next morning, Sarah was all smiles, humming to herself as she made breakfast. She wore her usual yoga outfit, tight leggings and a fitted tank top, hair pulled into a ponytail. I watched her move around the kitchen, light on her feet, graceful as always. But now I saw something different. I saw a liar. I forced myself to act normal, to joke with her, to kiss her goodbye as she headed off to another class. But as soon as the door closed behind her, I grabbed my keys and followed. I kept my distance, letting her car drift ahead. Always 2 or 3 vehicles between us. She didn't take her usual route. Instead of heading toward the yoga studio, she turned down side streets, weaving through unfamiliar neighborhoods. I gripped the wheel, my heart pounding. Where the hell was she going? After 20 minutes, she pulled up to an old, nondescript building on a quiet street. It looked abandoned. Faded brick walls, cracked windows, no signs or logos. Just a plain black door. I parked a block away, watching as she approached the entrance. My breath caught in my throat as she reached into her pocket and pulled out the key, the same key I'd found in the flower pot. She glanced over her shoulder once, twice, then unlocked the door and slipped inside. The door clicked shut behind her, the street silent once more. I sat there, frozen, my mind racing. What the hell was she doing here? This wasn't a yoga studio. It didn't even look like a place of business. It was just a building, one that seemed to swallow her whole. Then I saw them. 2 young men walked down the sidewalk, laughing and joking, dressed in casual clothes. One of them reached into his pocket and pulled out a key, identical to the one Sarah had used. They didn't hesitate, didn't even look around. They simply unlocked the door and went inside like they'd done it 100 times before. I watched them disappear, my pulse throbbing in my temples. Who were they? And why? Did they have the same key as my wife? This was no yoga class. I waited for over an hour, but she didn't come out. I wanted to go in, to demand answers. But my feet felt like they were made of stone. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. Eventually, I drove home, my mind a tangled mess of questions and fear. She came back that evening, her hair damp, her body exhausted, mumbling about an intense session. I didn't say anything. I just watched her, looking for cracks in her story. She didn't falter. Not once. The first attempt, the next day I followed her again. Same route, same building, same key. This time I was ready. As soon as she went inside, I got out of my car and walked to the door. I tried the handle, Locked. I pressed my ear against the wood, but heard nothing. I stepped back, glancing around the empty street. It was eerily quiet. I tried to peer through the windows, but they were tinted, completely blacked out. I pushed against the door again, harder, but it wouldn't budge. Locked tight. I was about to leave when I heard footsteps. Someone was coming. I bolted back to my car and watched as another young man approached the door, phone in hand. He looked normal, casual, jeans, sneakers, a hoodie. He pulled out a key, identical to Sarah's, and slipped inside without a second glance. My hands were shaking as I gripped the steering wheel. She was in there, with him, with all of them. Doing what? I didn't sleep that night either. The following day, I came prepared. I didn't follow her immediately. I waited, watching from a distance until she went inside. Then I pulled out my phone and made a call. Yeah, I need to place an order. Large pepperoni, extra cheese. 30 minutes later, I stood outside the black door, holding a pizza box. My heart raced as I approached the building. I timed it perfectly, just as another guy walked up. Hey, man, I called out, feigning cheerfulness. Someone ordered pizza? He looked at me, puzzled. I didn't. It was a call-in. Must have been one of your friends, I bluffed, holding up the box. I just deliver them. He shrugged, unlocking the door. All right, whatever. I followed him inside. The hallway was dimly lit, narrow, with doors lining each side. I heard voices, laughter, muffled music. My stomach churned. He didn't pay me any attention, walking off into one of the rooms. I moved quickly, keeping my head down, pretending to look for someone. I passed, the first door glancing in. Just a bathroom. The second was a storage room. But the third, I froze. The door was slightly ajar. Inside, I saw a set, almost like a movie studio. Lights, cameras, tripods. I heard giggling, then voices, both male and female. I recognized one of them, Sarah. I pressed myself against the wall, my heart pounding so loud I thought they'd hear it. I peeked through the crack, barely breathing. There she was, my wife. Standing in the middle of the room, wearing an outfit I'd never seen before. It was tight, revealing, nothing she'd ever wear outside. She was laughing, flirting, her hand on another man's chest. He was touching her, leaning in, his lips grazing her neck. She didn't pull away. She welcomed it. I felt my knees go weak, the ground shifting beneath me. My hands gripped the pizza box so tightly the cardboard crumpled. Then the cameras started, rolling. I couldn't look away. I couldn't move. It was like watching a car crash in slow motion, knowing the impact was coming but unable to stop it. They were filming, all of them. And she was the star. My wife. My Sarah. I turned and ran. I stumbled down the hallway, shoving open the door, gasping for air. I didn't stop until I reached my car, the pizza box crushed in my arms. I threw it on the ground, my chest heaving, bile rising in my throat. I felt like I was going to be sick. She lied. She lied about everything. The yoga classes, the climbing trips, the time away from me. She'd been doing this, with them, with strangers, on camera. I drove home in a daze, my mind shattered, my body numb. When she came back that night, she kissed me on the cheek, asked about dinner, acted like nothing had changed. But everything had. Everything. I don't know how I managed to look her in the eyes. Every morning she'd kiss me goodbye, smiling like nothing had changed. Every evening she'd come home, exhausted from her so-called yoga classes, never suspecting that I knew the truth. It was like living with a stranger. Worse, a traitor. But I didn't confront her. Not yet. I needed a plan, and I needed it to be perfect. If I played my cards right, she wouldn't just lose me, she'd lose everything. I started with the basics. I gathered every piece of paperwork I could find. Bank statements, insurance policies, investment accounts. I took photos of all her documents, her work contracts, her emails. I made digital copies and saved them in cloud storage, protected, with passwords she'd never guess. I met with a lawyer, someone who specialized in high-conflict divorces. I didn't tell him why. I simply explained that I wanted to protect my assets. He advised me on how to quietly transfer funds without raising suspicion. So I did. Bit by bit, I moved the money from our joint accounts into my personal ones. I left just enough so she wouldn't notice. The rest was safe, under my name alone. I called our insurance company and updated the beneficiaries, changed the locks on my investment accounts, transferred the house title solely to my name, claiming it was for tax purposes. I was surgical, methodical. I couldn't afford any mistakes. I went back to that building once more just to be sure. The black door was still there, still locking her secrets away. I watched from my car as she arrived, using that same damned key, her expression calm and confident. She looked so normal, so innocent. I wanted to hate her. I wanted to scream at her, demand answers. But I stayed silent, because the plan was already in motion. The financial blow. The next step was the money. One by one, I shut down every financial lifeline she had. Credit cards were canceled, joint savings were transferred. I even rerouted her paycheck into an account she couldn't access. It wasn't enough to leave her. I was going to leave her with nothing. I called her boss, pretending to be her. Faked a sick voice, said she was taking an extended leave of absence. They were understanding, even offered to send flowers. I laughed at the irony. By the time she found out, she'd already be unemployed, and she'd have no idea why. I moved through each step without emotion, like I was dismantling someone else's life, but it was hers. She was the one who lied, the one who betrayed me. She deserved this. I kept waiting for her to notice something was wrong, but she didn't. She was too wrapped up in her lies, too confident in her ability to deceive me. She didn't even notice when her credit card was declined, just laughed it off, blaming technical issues. It was almost too easy. When the paperwork was ready, when the accounts were emptied and her job was gone, I decided it was time to watch her break. I planned it perfectly. A quiet evening, dinner at home, just the two of us. She poured wine, chattering about her day, oblivious to the trap I'd set. I waited until we were halfway through the meal before I said it. I've been thinking, maybe I should try yoga. She froze, her wine glass halfway to her lips. Her eyes flicked to mine, wide with shock. What? She managed, her voice too high, too sharp. Yeah, I said, leaning back casually. You're always so relaxed afterward. Maybe I could use some of that zen. She laughed, but it was forced. I don't think you'd like it. It's pretty intense. Not really your style. I smiled. You're right. I'm not as flexible as you. Not as experienced. Her face went pale. She opened her mouth, but no words came out. Her hands were trembling. I watched her squirm, savoring the fear in her eyes. You know, I continued, swirling my wine, you really are good at it. I've never seen anyone move like you do. Her eyes filled with tears. I can explain. I laughed, cold and hollow. Oh, I'm sure you can, but why bother? I've already seen the show. I pulled out my phone, scrolling to the videos I'd recorded. Screenshots of her, half-dressed, smiling for the camera. Her face crumpled as she realized what they were. She started crying, the sound raw and broken. She tried to reach for me, pleading, Please, I didn't mean, It's not what you think. I stood up, backing away from her touch. Not what I think? Are you seriously going to lie to me again? She sobbed, falling to her knees, begging for forgiveness. I felt nothing, not pity, not sympathy, just a cold, hollow satisfaction. Pulled a manila envelope from the drawer and tossed it on the table. Those are divorce papers. I've already filed. You'll be served tomorrow. She stared at the envelope, her face crumpling in despair. No, please, don't do this. I love you. I laughed again, the sound bitter. Love? You don't even know what that means. She reached for me, desperation in her eyes. I'll quit. I'll never go back. I'll do anything, just please don't leave me. I stepped back, my voice cold. It's too late. You made your choice. Now live with it. The divorce was swift, brutal, and entirely in my favor. She lost everything. The house, the savings, even the car. I took it all. I heard from mutual friends that she was staying in a cheap apartment, struggling to make ends meet. Her reputation was ruined, her name dragged through the mud. I didn't care. She earned every ounce of misery. Weeks later, I saw a news article. The porn studio had been raided. Arrests were made, names were released. Hers was among them. I saved the article, a trophy of her downfall, People asked if I was okay, if I was lonely. I just smiled and said I was better than ever. Because in the end, she didn't just lose me. She lost herself, and that was my victory.